In this video, I'll present a case study on a research project that investigated small business viability in Australia with the intention to develop interventions to support small business success. By the end of this session, you will understand the importance of research with stakeholders and users in a design context, understand how research with stakeholders and users can be used to develop user profiles, understand some approaches to representing user and stakeholder data in complex systems, and understand how research insights can inform targeted interventions to solve problems. This video has 4 parts. In part 1, I will introduce the project background and set the context. In part 2, I'll discuss the research methodology and analysis approach. In part 3, I'll present the research outcomes, including user and stakeholder profiles and the ecosystem map. In part 4, I will conclude by discussing the recommendations and interventions that came from the project. Part 1, Introduction. Australia has approximately 2.5 million small to medium enterprises, which contribute 1/3 of Australia's total GDP. Estimates are that 1 in 3 small businesses fail in their first year, 1 in 2 small businesses fail by the second year, and 3 of 4 small businesses fail in the 5th year. It is important to understand how to stimulate business startups, but also how to minimize the number of business dissolutions. It is critical to focus on small businesses, as over 90% of businesses in Australia fall into this category. To inform the project, we first conducted a comprehensive literature review. Some of the key findings are shown on this slide. The survival of new firms has been extensively studied since the 1980s, focusing on factors like firm size, international exposure, and the business leader's age. Smaller firms, like small businesses, often exhibit higher growth rates, but also face a greater likelihood of exiting the industry due to challenges in attracting financial capital and achieving economies of scale. The shift from an industrial to an innovative economy requires firms to adapt to pursuing innovative ideas, which has been shown to enhance survival chances, particularly during financial crises. Additionally, the entrepreneur's role in fostering creativity among employees and maintaining psychological resilience is critical for sustaining business operations. Other important factors include the interaction between export activity and human capital, as well as financial characteristics like debt-to-equity ratios and initial capitalization, which influence a firm's ability to survive early challenges. Personal characteristics of the entrepreneur, such as age, gender, education, and psychological resilience significantly affect firm survival. And external factors like economic conditions, interest rates, and industry-specific dynamics play a crucial role in determining a firm's longevity. These insights from the literature were important for informing the types of participants to include in the research, the questions to ask them, and factors to consider in the analysis. Some of these factors you might recognize as this video continues. The project investigated factors that influence the success, resilience, and viability of small businesses in their first 18 months of operation. This focus responded to the context explained earlier, the importance of small business in Australia, and the significant number of businesses that fail. The project was a partnership between Queensland University of Technology's Design Lab and Centre for Behavioural Economics, Society and Technology, and the Australian Tax Office, which is the principal revenue collection agency of the Australian government. Among a range of responsibilities relating to tax, finance, superannuation and business, the ATO is invested in supporting small businesses through the provision of various services and resources. This project sought to understand how the ATO can help to increase the viability of early-stage small businesses, taking into account specifically the post-COVID-19 environment. Implement interventions that support new small business owners' success with a particular focus on their interaction with the tax system, and reduce the economic and social impacts of business failure by assisting those businesses that were never going to be viable to early exit. Part 2, Research. In this part of the video, I'll explain the methodology of the project and the participant groups of the research. The project adopted 2 methods. The first method was a quantitative exploration and analysis of available data using the Business Longitudinal Analysis Data Environment, which is called BLADE. This data environment provided historical information about small businesses over time, and it provided a macro view of the small business landscape in Australia. The second method was the facilitation and analysis of 8 focus group discussions with small business owners and business professionals. As a qualitative research method, these focus groups provided a more micro viewpoint through the investigation of specific experiences, activities, and behaviors of small business owners and professionals. The case study presented in this video focuses on the second method, conducting the analysis and the outcomes of the focus groups. Participating in the 8 focus groups were 5 different participant cohorts. 3 cohorts were comprised of small business owners. These are shown in the yellow. We had 2 focus groups attended by new business owners. These were business owners who had commenced operating their business only in the last 5 years. They were also limited to owning only one business. Talking with this group provided insight into the experience of business owners who were just starting out. Another 2 groups were comprised of experienced business owners. These were business owners who have been in operation for 5 or more years with 1 or more businesses. Talking with this group provided insights into how experienced owners approach business operations and what actions and learnings they see as valuable. The final business owner group was comprised of individuals who have operated a business and experienced its closure. Talking with this group provided insight into the experience of business failure and the factors that contribute to such an event and the learnings gained from it. 2 cohorts comprised of business professionals. One group was business professionals in the area of consulting, finance, human resources, and coaching. The other group was business professionals focusing on accounting and financial services. Talking with these groups provided insight into the professionals and services available to support small business. It also provided secondary information on the behaviors and attitudes of business owners. Each focus group lasted a duration of 2 hours. One of the benefits of focus groups is the opportunity for participants to engage in rich discussions in which one participant's perspective can prompt a response from another. As facilitators, we asked a series of questions with associated prompts to get discussion started. Our questions sequentially explored business owners' experiences relating to the past, present, and the future of business operations. Regarding the past, we sought to understand factors that influence business ownership and the steps taken to start a business. In the present, we sought to understand experiences, the factors that influence them, and the effect that they have. We also wanted to understand the learnings that result from these experiences. In terms of the future, we sought to understand future concerns and the planning and support needs of small business owners. For the business owner groups, questions were posed directly to them to gain first-person accounts, such as asking them, why did you start a small business? For the business professionals groups, these questions were often framed to gain third-person accounts, such as, in your experience, how do small business owners go about starting their business? Part 3, Outcomes. In this part of the video, I'll explain our approach to analysing the focus group data. I will also present some results in the form of data visualizations that helped us to understand and profile small business owners. The last part of this section will explain the ecosystem map that we created as a result of the data. From the focus group discussions, we gained a considerable amount of textual data in the form of recordings and transcripts. To analyze the data, we applied a thematic content analysis. This involved reviewing the data transcripts and assigning or coding themes and concepts to passages of text. Our analysis focused on 4 theme categories: elements, actions, context factors, and behavioral economics concepts. I'll explain each of these. Elements are the various entities that comprise the small business ecosystem. Element codes include stakeholders and actors, for example, accountants, friends, or customers. Organizations, these included things like the ATO or ASIC, and resources that are accessed by small businesses, for example, websites, courses, or loans. Collectively, these represent various resources, people, and organizations that small business owners can interact with. Actions are the actions taken or described by participants in the starting, running, and closing of business. For example, expanding to a new premises, planning, networking, and diversifying. You can think of these as business activities that business owners engage in. Context factors are the various conditions that affect or otherwise relate to small business. Context factors could include situations like COVID-19, conditions, for example, business competition, trends such as local support, and other circumstances, for example, prior knowledge. These can be a mix of tangible and intangible concepts. Behavioral economic concepts relate to the theoretical behavioral economics concepts displayed by participants. These include biases, aversions, tolerances, motivations, and responses. For example, risk aversion and tolerance, control aversion and tolerance, being proactive, or pecuniary preferences. In our analysis, it was important to think of these categories as related. For example, context factors such as COVID or an economic downturn might cause a person to take a specific action, such as to seek financial advice. This action is likely related to elements in the system, such as a financial accountant or a website with information. And how a person goes about these actions will be determined by their behavioral biases. To represent these relationships, we applied a network diagramming approach. Nodes are the circular shapes that represent the individual concepts. Their size represents their prominence in the data. Edges are the connections between nodes. These represent two or more concepts are connected. Their thickness represents the strength of the relationship, that is, how often they are connected in the data. This relational information can infer the importance of concepts for different groups of people and how they affect other components of the system. I'll demonstrate this on the next few slides. This is a network diagram that represents the new or single small business ownership group. This group was characterized by 4 key behavioral patterns: control-based procedures, control-tolerant, active approach, and prediction-based procedures. Each of these behaviors has specific relationships with other coded concepts and contextual factors, particularly COVID-19. Control-based procedures are a proactive response to ambiguity, involving adaptation and business management actions. An example of this could be adapting to online platforms or offering online services in a store. The group adopted an active, goal-oriented mindset with a strong emphasis on branding and marketing, particularly through social media, and enhancing business management practice to grow and maintain their businesses. Control tolerant. This behavior reflects openness to external advice, notably from friends and family and accountants. They emphasize seeking and sharing knowledge within trusted personal networks and from professional services. Prediction-based procedures. This group drew on past experiences and ongoing research to improve business viability in uncertain times. One participant highlighted leveraging prior knowledge in business banking to enhance their business decision-making. The experienced business owners group displayed 6 behavioral characteristics: control-tolerant, control-based procedures, prediction-based procedures, active-based approach, being risk-tolerant, and trusting. These behaviors indicate a broad range of strategies for managing business complexity and uncertainty. Control-tolerant behaviors were evidenced by a willingness to seek professional support and advice from external sources like mentors, networks, and coaches. Control-based procedures included proactive strategies to diversify business and manage risk. This was particularly evident during COVID-19 with planning and adaptation as key elements of their control-based approach. Prediction-based procedures were evidenced from a cautious planning and ability to adapt to unpredictable conditions. They sought financial grants and other support mechanisms to maintain cash flow and improve their business stability. Active approach. The group actively engaged with external technology support and professional networks to enhance branding and their marketing efforts. This group was also risk-tolerant, but they made sure to balance risk with reward. Trust was critical to building strong business relationships, particularly with suppliers, to create favorable business terms. The business closure group was characterized by 5 distinct behaviors: control-tolerant, risk-averse, prediction-based procedures, passive approach, and withdrawal approach. These behaviors reflect how participants manage the closure of their business and the factors influencing their decisions. Participants were control-tolerant. They were open to assistance during business closure, relying on professionals like accountants or personal networks. Participants also displayed an aversion to risk, often opting for small-scale operations that didn't involve significant financial investment. In many cases, they avoided taking on loans or adapting to new models during business difficulties, which ultimately led to their closure. Prediction-based procedures. This cautious behavior involved evaluating business conditions and seeking knowledge before making closure decisions. Participants aimed to learn from the past to plan for any future ventures. A lack of action, or a passive approach. This was characterized by some participants' response to business challenges. Some delayed closure despite advice, while others followed an uninformed, intuitive approach during startup. Withdrawal approach. Some participants withdrew from their business due to a loss of motivation, and that contributed to closure. The business agents and consultants group focused on the importance of proactive business planning, goal setting, and adapting to change. Two major themes that emerged from this group were control-based procedures and control-tolerant behaviors. This group placed significant emphasis on the need for their business to plan and adapt in response to changes, especially during COVID-19. Adapting to online platforms and digital tools, especially for marketing and service delivery, were also crucial for survival and growth. Networking, employment decisions, and knowledge sharing were identified as key business practices, and these are evidence of control-tolerant behavior. Engaging with professional networks and building teams with complementary skills was essential to overcoming challenges. They recognized the importance of seeking knowledge to gain new perspectives. The accountants and finance consultant groups exhibited three notable behaviors: control-based procedures, control tolerance, and passive approach. These behaviors reveal how small business owners and their financial consultants interact, particularly in relation to business management and financial planning. Business owners often seek professional support and adapt their business practices, leading to opportunities for improvement. In terms of control-tolerant behaviors, as business owners engage more frequently with professionals, they develop a habit of seeking support for decision-making. This enhances their business management practices, allowing them to ask the right questions before making important decisions. The passive approach was identified as a key problem for small business owners, particularly in areas outside of business owners' expertise. Many small business owners delay tasks such as bookkeeping and tax registration until triggered by an external event, such as communication from the tax office. This often leads to seeking professional help only when the issue becomes urgent, rather than being proactive. These results, and results from other areas of the broader research project, allowed us to identify 8 key themes. First, we observed varied motivations for starting businesses. While some small business owners were driven by growth opportunities, others started businesses out of necessity, reflecting both pecuniary and non-pecuniary motivations. This finding was important because it contradicts existing literature, which tends to emphasize growth as the primary motivation. Financial goals, capabilities, and resources influence business activity. Entrepreneurs with limited resource often lack the planning seen in growth-focused businesses, which affects their long-term success. Personal traits, such as risk tolerance, attitudes, and experiences affect decision-making. Optimistic business owners were more likely to engage in proactive planning, while risk-averse individuals tended to withdraw. Behavioral biases were found to manifest in various ways. Understanding how these vary across people is important for supporting small business owners. Biases are particularly important for understanding how people access support and ensuring that support is designed to be accessible. Information attractiveness is shaped by personal traits. Resource-limited businesses may find professional support less accessible. Response to ambiguity, approach bias, and how business failure is conceptualized all play pivotal roles in shaping the behaviors, adaptability, and vision of business owners. Our individual research findings contributed to the development of a causal loop ecosystem map and stakeholder map. The maps were framed by the question, what supports early-stage small businesses' viability and success? The maps provide an overview of the upstream and downstream effects of decisions and factors on the response of the business and its trajectory to viability. The causal loop ecosystem map comprised 4 main elements or sections, which contain components that interact. The realms of the individual or the internal, money, market, and support systems. These all lead into the core loop. Explaining the whole map is out of the scope of this video, but here is one example of an area of the map. Here we can see how different nodes link to one another. The central concept of resilience, for example, enhances the ability to respond to uncertainty. This in turn supports willingness to change. Willingness to change is attached to advice and knowledge-seeking behavior. Throughout the map, these different concepts link to one another, creating loops. Some of these lead to positive behavior, and others lead to, less positive behavior. The collective map illustrates the complex relationships among factors in the small business ecosystem, and importantly, it helps us identify specific areas to try to enhance or specific areas where we need solutions to problems. In addition to this, the stakeholder map layer links these factors to specific stakeholders and resources. This could be personal networks, industry bodies, and specific services and resources. This approach enabled us to link small business activity, including both desirable and undesirable behavior, to stakeholders and resources in the system. It allowed for the identification of gaps, as well as better visibility of the breadth of interventions that could be encouraged for small business owners. Part 4, Conclusion. In this last section, I will briefly summarize the recommendations and interventions that came from this work. Based on the research findings and the ecosystem map, 2 recommendations are proposed to improve small business viability. First, profiling small business owners should occur early, ideally within the first 30 days of business registration. This profiling would categorize owners based on their motivations and goals, allowing for the delivery of targeted information and relevant support services. As we know from the findings presented in this research, there's various types of people and different types of business owners, and each of these different groups has different types of behavioral biases and different approaches to how they conduct small business. Creating various business profiles would allow for a tailored approach to providing resources that apply and are appealing to different groups of people. Second, business readiness questions should be posed to prospective business owners upon business registration to prompt self-reflection on their preparedness for starting a business. These questions would function as a conversation, focusing on planning and goal setting to guide individuals through self-assessment without discouraging them from starting their venture. The purpose here is to identify actions already taken and those that need attention, encouraging owners to either perform these activities or seek help from relevant services. This type of intervention would provide excellent access to different types of services. It would make them visible to small business owners, and importantly, it would communicate to the business owners whether they'd done their due diligence in setting up their business venture or if there was more work to be done. That concludes this case study. From this, you will have gained an understanding of how research with stakeholders and users can help develop user profiles, represent complex systems, and inform targeted interventions to address problems.